Hello, class. Welcome to chapter 19. This is going to be talking about nutrition really throughout childhood, starting at infancy and ending in adolescence. So, some very important things happen within the first few months of life. Baby can double in weight within about 6 months. Baby's length will increase 50% within the first year. By the age of 20, both males and females have reached their maximum height. Girls do this usually a little bit earlier, around 14, 15, boys between 19 and 20. And this is a time where nutrient deficiencies, as well as nutrient excess, play just such a crucial role. Because if nutrients are low or a child is deficient in any one of the many nutrients, both macro and micronutrients, that can impair their ability to grow to their fullest extent. And growth can be physical, but this could also, impact their growth of their brain and brain growth. So we do see some lifelong consequences of undernutrition and overnutrition that have their roots in childhood. We want to monitor anthropometric parameters in these children. So these would be measurements we can take. And that's because these measurements allow us to assess how healthy they are and are a direct correlation of their nutritional status. So weight gain, for example, weight is actually related more to short-term nutritional status, where height is indicated of long-term nutritional status. So for example, if a child has a short-term malnutrition, that might not affect their height. But if they have a long-term malnutrition, for example, they're chronically iron deficient, or they're chronically not getting enough protein, or chronically not getting enough calcium, that could affect their height. And once they're past that period of reaching maximum height, you can't reverse that. So this child could always be smaller or shorter than their peers. Weight can fluctuate more, though. Zinc is one nutrient that is especially important for both reproduction, but also cell growth. And there have been cases of children whose growth has been severely halted by zinc deficiency. Zinc can be bound up by certain nutrients in foods, not really nutrients, but certain properties in foods, such as phytates and oxalates. And there was a case in Egypt where they recognized zinc deficiency in a young boy who was 16 years old and was only about 4 feet tall. And so this was identified to be due to zinc deficiency. Percentiles. So how do we assess these anthropometric measurements? Well, we have numbers, and we actually put these numbers on what's called growth charts. And the growth charts allow us to determine what percentile children are in. The percentiles have to do with looking at that child's position relative to other children of their same age and gender. So how do they compare to other children? So the growth charts are established by taking measurements from many, many children and determining kind of averages. If somebody has a 90th percentile on the growth chart, for example, for height, that means that they are taller than 89% of other children, their age and gender, and they're only smaller than 10% of other children, their age and gender. There are growth charts starting at birth, going up to 2 years old, and then there are separate growth charts that go between ages 2 to 20 years. And what can be measured on a growth chart or plotted on a growth chart? Length for age, weight for length, which is very similar to BMI. This is usually done in children under 2. Head circumference for age, again, generally focused on in the under 2. And BMI for age, which is more of a factor in the over 2. Head circumference for age directly correlates with brain growth. So if they don't see a child's head growing adequately, it could indicate that there's some issue with brain development and brain growth. If they see a child's head growing too quickly, it could be a problem, especially at infancy, such as fluid on the brain or some sort of swelling. So these are examples of some growth charts. And the pink one is actually for girls and happens to be from birth to 24 months of age. The blue one is for boys and is from 2 to 20 years of age. And pretty much what happens is you plot the child's parameters over time. So for example, with the girl at birth, this girl weighed, that wasn't supposed to happen, about 3.5 kilos, or it looks like just under 8 pounds. Let's move to another one we can see real easily. At 6 months, these are months, this girl weighed about 8 kilos, or now we can follow this line over here, just under 18 pounds. And so this girl, her pattern on this growth chart is pretty linear with these percentiles, meaning she's not really moving between these percentiles. And how can I tell what these percentiles are? Right here. So this girl is between the 75th and 90th percentile. And that seems to be kind of where she's always been. And so this is weight for age. On top, you're looking at length for age. And the girl is plotting very linearly again, right around this 50th percentile. This boy, however, has a different trend, and I'll try to make my writing a little bit clearer with this line. And so what's happening with this boy's growth, and this happens to be BMI for age, is that his growth is actually crossing percentile lines. So he starts here, which is right about, the 50th percentile. And then he ends up right here, which is kind of in the middle of these two, but he's between the 85th and 90th percentile. And actually, anything over the 85th percentile is considered overweight. So we can see that starting right around maybe 5 or 6 months, this boy's weight shot way up and he fell into the overweight category. Anything over 95th percentile is considered obesity, and anything below 5th percentile is considered underweight or potentially failure to thrive. So parameters between the 5th and the 85th percentile are considered normal. Okay, failure to thrive. So anything below the 5th percentile can be considered failure to thrive, and these could be true nutritional malnourishments, or they can sometimes just be small babies. I have a friend who has twins. The twins were always small. They're still small. They eat great. They're doing well. They're talking. They're walking. There's nothing developmentally wrong with them or failing in them. They're just little. And sometimes parents who are smaller tend to have smaller children as well. So sometimes it is a nutritional issue and a growth issue, a true clinical concern, and other times it's not. It is diagnosed in about 5 to 10% of children, and there can be feeding reasons, medical reasons, but also environmental reasons and kind of exposure issues. So actually, low-income families and a child who grows up in a situation of poverty, that is one of the highest contributors to risk for failure to thrive. Parents who are neglectful to their child, parents who don't give that child one-on-one interaction, children with difficulty feeding, those are additional concerns that might cause failure to thrive. But there's many, many, many just different possibilities that could be causing this condition. No matter what's causing it, you would want to do a thorough investigation and assessment and try to intervene to help this infant gain weight, get back on track, and be more similar to peers their age. So what do we feed our babies? We don't feed them real food until generally after 6 months. Some books will say as early as 4 months, and my son's pediatrician actually said as early as 4 months was fine. Excuse me. but you might get some different advice on that. Generally speaking, 6 months would be a good time. So up until that 6 months, babies should be fed either breast milk or formula, infant formula. And babies' needs during this time are higher than any other stage, because remember that birth weight is going to potentially even triple in the first year of life, and their length is going to increase 50%. There are carb needs as well as protein and fat needs that are based on grams per day. But there are additional equations that can be found in this book or other textbooks that actually have recommendations based on weight, infant weight. And to me, those are more accurate estimations, because babies are going to be all different size. You know, a baby who's born at 9 or 10 pounds, which some babies are, is going to have different needs than a baby who's born at 4 or 5 pounds. So yeah, there are different needs, and I don't actually particularly like the way that our book summarizes these needs, but that's what we've got. If you take a advanced nutrition class in maternal and child education, you can, or maternal and child nutrition, you can learn all about specific numbers for different weight children. Again, we've got protein and fat in grams per day. I don't like these. I think these should be expressed as grams per kilogram, because all children are different sizes, etc. But this is how it is. Protein, you don't want to have too much protein, because babies' kidneys are still very immature, and you can actually cause some kidney damage by giving the baby too much protein, because the kidneys have to break down protein. And then fats, it's important to have healthy types of fat incorporated into the diet. For example, the omega-3s and omega-6s, but omega-3s in higher amount, because some of these fats are important for brain development as well as vision and many other important things. Breast milk does have some of these fats naturally if mom is consuming these fats. And infant formula does not have them naturally, but more recently, companies are adding these fortifications to infant formula. Vitamins that are important for infant. So generally speaking, and this is with about 90% accuracy, babies are born very sterile. And because they're born very sterile, they don't have any bacteria in their intestinal tract. And one of the things that intestinal bacteria do is produce vitamin K. So adults have bacteria living in their intestines that produce vitamin K. And we can also get vitamin K from diet. Because babies don't have that, they are at risk of vitamin K deficiency. And because vitamin K, hopefully you remember, plays such a crucial role in blood clotting, babies are given injections, actually, of vitamin K shortly after birth to allow them to blood clot, for their blood to clot if necessary, because otherwise babies would not be able to clot their blood efficiently and could experience bleeding problems. Vitamin D is necessary for infants. It's not recommended to take your infant out into direct sunlight, because their skin is very fragile, as well as their eyes are fragile. They don't know anything about looking at the sun or not looking at the sun. And so breast milk can provide some vitamin D, but generally speaking, you should supplement your baby with vitamin D. And this can be done in a droplet form. I had a vitamin D product that was just one simple drop that you could give baby. You could actually give it on the breast, or you could put it on your finger, or you could drop it directly into baby's mouth. And so that's important for baby. Most infant formulas are fortified with vitamin D, but you would just want to confirm this. And then if you have a vegan breastfeeding mom, that vegan mom would want to give baby a B12 supplement just to make sure baby was getting enough. Some minerals that are important, well, all of them are important. There are some kind of very important ones. Iron, for example, iron is absolutely needed for growth and development and transfer of oxygen, formation of red blood cells. And infants actually have some iron stores that they have acquired from mom during the last few weeks of gestation. And so they have some when they're born, and those can last them up to 6 months. And they do get some through breast milk, but generally speaking, breast milk is pretty low. Even though it's low, the amount of iron that they get from it is very bioavailable, meaning they can absorb that iron very well, but it still becomes inadequate once they reach a certain age. And so it becomes important to make sure that baby has been introduced to iron-containing foods starting around 6 months, and or take an iron supplement. Most baby formulas are fortified with iron. There's generally not any reason not to fortify them with iron, so it's a pretty standard fortification to baby formulas. 3 cups a day. 3 cups a day of what? So generally speaking, and again, this would be more accurate if it was based on milliliters per kilogram or liters per kilogram, but this is 3 cups of fluid. Baby needs about 3 cups of fluid a day to stay hydrated. And fluid can come from many sources, but the best and really only appropriate sources for an infant to get their fluids is from either breast milk or infant formula. You actually do not want to give babies water. You might think, oh, baby's thirsty, I'm going to give them some water. You actually don't want to give them water. Babies can actually die if they drink too much water. And this is because water does not have sufficient electrolyte levels, and so baby's electrolytes can get thrown off. And you don't want to give baby juice because it also doesn't have sufficient electrolytes, as well as it's not loaded in all of the nutrients that formula or breast milk is loaded with. Because babies have little tiny stomachs, when they are eating, you want to maximize whatever the nutrient content is in what they're eating. So by giving them breast milk or an infant formula, you can be sure that they're getting calories, protein, fats, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, etc. Where if they just get water or juice, they're not getting very many nutrients from either of those products. Breastfeeding. So there are many benefits to breastfeeding. Hopefully you remember from our last lecture. It definitely seems to be nutritionally superior, as well as many other factors. However, not all moms are going to choose to breastfeed. Not all moms are going to want to breastfeed. Not all moms are going to be able to breastfeed. And that is totally okay. We can thank food science and food technology, as well as years and years of research, that the infant formula, the ability to produce infant formula that is so advanced is just phenomenal. We can produce infant formulas with vitamins and minerals and protein and fatty acids, and really our access to infant formula that is safe and adequate for baby in the United States is quite a blessing. So if moms can't or don't want to breastfeed, they can get formula. Say mom isn't producing milk, but she still wants to breastfeed. Mom can actually get a prescription written by her doctor so that her infant can get breast milk. And that breast milk comes from donations given to breast milk banks and is distributed through hospitals. So if mom wants to breastfeed but can't, baby can still get breast milk. All it takes is a doctor's prescription, and it's generally covered by insurance. So that's a good thing. If mom is breastfeeding, some of the foods that she eats, the flavors will transfer to her milk. And so some science says that different flavors can make baby fussy. Some science disagrees with that. However, kind of all science agrees that diversity in flavors of what mom is eating actually can play a role in baby's later acceptance of a diverse range of foods. BPA. So what about infant bottles? If baby is breastfeeding or formula feeding, mom may want to pump and store some of that breast milk in bottles, say if mom has to go back to work, or if baby's formula fed, baby's going to be fed via the bottle. And there is a chemical that's commonly used to produce plastics. It's called BPA, bisphenol A. And it is found in very, very small amounts in plastics. Generally speaking, we don't think that this is a concern, but there's a possibility that this chemical can cause endocrine disruption, meaning it can disrupt our hormone system and interfere with reproductive health. And so because of consumer pressure, the FDA actually banned this specifically for use in baby bottles and sippy cups starting in 2012. And so you won't find BPA in baby bottles or sippy cups anymore. Many moms, because of their kind of concern with plastics potentially leaching into foods or baby formula, many moms might choose to use glass bottles or even potentially like a stainless steel bottle, but moms can choose whatever they like as their preference. What else to talk about? So cow's milk. Sometimes moms might think formula is really expensive. Cow's milk is very cheap. It's available. It's healthy. Milk does a body good. I'm going to give my baby some cow's milk. It's actually not recommended to give baby cow's milk, and there's many reasons. I'll just touch on a couple. One, cow's milk is very low in iron, so baby could have iron deficiency. Two, cow's milk has actually been associated with gastrointestinal irritation and even bleeding in some extreme cases. And three, there's too much protein and high phosphorus and calcium load in cow's milk that can actually stress the kidneys out a little bit. What's formula made of? Formula generally has lactose or sucrose as the sugar source. Once in a while, it has fructose. It has proteins, it has vegetable oils as the fats, and sometimes it has added essential fatty acids. Infants and allergies. Sometimes infants may be allergic to cow's milk-based formula, and so what's generally tried for these infants is a soy-based formula. However, within the infants who have the cow's milk allergy and try the soy, about 70% of them may also be allergic to the soy because the proteins actually look kind of similar. And so antibodies can bind to them in our body. Other recommendations: don't microwave your formula. That's because microwaves heat unevenly and it could be a risk for giving baby burns if they were to eat a formula that's too hot. Starting solids. So generally speaking, solids should be started around 6 months, but it is possible to start earlier if baby seems ready. Some of the cues that baby will give you that they're ready is being able to sit up on their own, being able to support their head and neck, maybe watching you eat, pointing at your food, making grunting sounds when you're eating, opening their mouth to show you that they're interested in eating, turning towards you if you have food, etc. So it is possible to start earlier, but generally recommending 6 months or later. What kinds of food do you start with? This is an example from your book, and I actually think there's some better examples out there. But typical progression starts with a rice-based cereal, and the reason for this is the infant rice-based cereals are iron fortified. They're very, very soft. You can mix them with water or breast milk, and they're about the consistency of cream of wheat. So they're very easy to eat, they're warm, and they're fortified with vitamins and minerals. Next would be some sort of vegetable, and generally speaking, they recommend vegetables before fruits because vegetables tend to be more bitter, less sweet. And the thought is that if you introduced a fruit first, that baby might not want to have the vegetable at all. But some of this is kind of, traditional feeding recommendations. There is a newer, and I say newer in quotes if you could see me, method, and it's actually called baby-led weaning, and it's really not new at all. It's the original method of feeding babies, which is baby eats what mom and dad are eating. And so the new method involves giving baby soft foods that mom and dad are eating. And the order of them doesn't really matter, and they're not pureed foods, and you're not spoon feeding baby. You're actually allowing baby to pick up foods by themselves and eat the foods. So you can read more about that if you're interested, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that it's not set in stone as far as what baby needs to eat on each specific week. What else? Foods to introduce. Okay, so what types of foods? So there used to be a strong recommendation to avoid any foods that could be potential allergens. And the thought was if you introduce these allergen foods to baby would develop allergies. Research has shown, and actually observational studies have shown, that this is actually not true at all, and the opposite is true, and that by introducing foods early to baby actually is less likely to have an allergy for those foods. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more coming up. Other foods that you would give baby, baby does not need any spices. So baby doesn't need salt, baby doesn't need sugar, baby doesn't need pepper, baby does not need sriracha. Hopefully you wouldn't give that to your baby, but just give baby plain food: mashed carrots, mashed potato, mashed chicken, mashed fish, some yogurt, some applesauce, whatever you like to eat yourself, give to baby. Something that's unprocessed, something that's natural, something hopefully you've cooked at home, or maybe you've bought at the store and it's just single ingredient, and something that's, healthy for baby. All right, so progression with feeding. So as babies get older, their ability to feed themselves improves, and the feeding and eating experience is actually very important to their physical and emotional and mental development. So for example, their ability to hold and control a cup, their ability to pick things up such as Cheerios, their ability to use a spoon or a fork, those are all motor skills, and some of those are gross motor skills, and some of those are fine motor skills. But baby's ability to do that actually is a skill, a physical skill, and a physical development that baby's learning. Eating different textured foods as well as drinking from a cup can actually help improve baby's speech. And so that is all kind of an important process of allowing baby to try different things and feed themselves. And this feeding process will be very messy, and it will take time. Babies take a long time to sit and eat. They eat very slowly. And so parents need to be patient with baby and set aside time to sit there with baby and help baby eat. Babies should always be supervised when eating because they do have risk of choking, and you would want to avoid that at all costs. So you would never leave baby to eat by him or herself. Growing up. Okay, so we're getting a little older. So preschool or school age children, this is generally considered 2 to 5 years old, would be preschool. School age comes a little lower. These children are continuing to grow. However, their growth has substantially slowed down since infancy. And because their growth has slowed down, some of their energy needs have slowed down. Again, I don't like our book's recommendations, how they do it on grams per day, because, all of these children are so different, and they're going to be different heights and different weights and different activity levels. And so I think using a estimation that is based on grams per kilogram is much more accurate way to assess children's needs. And again, if you want to take a more advanced class, you can learn about that there. Sodium, let's just say nobody needs more sodium ever. Like very, 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 very rarely does somebody need more sodium or should actually try to eat sodium. Maybe a runner who's sweating a lot. But for the general public, beginning in infancy, going up to 100 years old, nobody needs more sodium. So we can just establish that right now. Again, like in infancy, eating is a growing and learning experience. It's an experiment for children. Literally, they're experimenting with different things. How does this taste? What if I don't eat that? What if I throw this thing off the table? How do I drink this milk, And so giving them different types of foods, different colors of food, different textures of foods, challenging them to, use a fork or a spoon or drink from a cup or drink a smoothie or, drink something with ice in it. They're going to learn all those things. And so this is a great time to get children involved in food and the kitchen. So maybe take them shopping at the grocery store, the farmer's market, and let them pick out a couple fruits and veggies. Or while you're in the kitchen cooking, let them stand on a stool so that they can see what you're doing and talk to them while you're doing it. I say, give them a tour of what you're doing. Say, oh, I'm getting the vegetables out of the fridge, and we have to wash the vegetables so that they're clean and there's no dirt or pesticides on them. And now I'm going to steam the vegetables, cut the vegetables, mix the eggs, whatever you're doing, tell them what you're doing. And if there's a place that they can help out, maybe wash the vegetables or set the table, or, throw away the peels or something in the trash. Let them help out. This empowers them in the kitchen. It actually helps build their confidence in the kitchen. And children who are involved in both cooking, shopping, preparing, and planning meals are more likely to be adults who have those skills and confidence to do that for themselves. Responsibility. So this quote above is from a very famous nutritionist, dietitian named Ellen Satter, and she kind of revolutionized the idea of what's called the division of labor between parent and child. And so this quote represents the division of labor, and the division of labor is supposed to emphasize what roles are the parents and what roles are the child's as far as eating and feeding goes. And so she says parents are responsible for the what, when, and where of feeding. Children are responsible for the how much and whether. And so what this means is a parent's job is to provide the food, choose the food, decide when that meal is going to happen and where. Like, for example, we are going to eat spaghetti at the dinner table at 6 p.m. Child's responsibility is to sit there and decide if they're going to eat that spaghetti or not and how much. Parents should not intervene by telling child how much to eat. Parents should not even say, oh, take another bite. You'll get dessert if you finish your plate. You have to eat your veggies or you won't get dessert. It really should be up to the child to eat. And that's because children have this innate ability to self-regulate how many calories they're intaking to maintain a healthy weight. And if external cues interfere with that, such as a parent bribing them to eat their vegetables or a parent getting mad at them if they haven't finished everything on their plate, they're going to learn to override those internal signals and cues. And those internal signals and cues are what keeps them at a healthy weight. And so they're going to become more influenced by external cues. And that can actually lead to eating disorders as well as obesity later in life. A few things I didn't talk about in detail are listed here, but if you want, you can read about them on your own. One thing I will mention is autism and nutrition, just because I think it's been in the news recently. It is very common for children with autism to have food allergies, to have celiac disease, to have eating issues. Maybe they're only going to eat a few foods. Maybe they're going to have some difficulty swallowing, just a variety of feeding issues. Maybe they can't sit at the table for long enough because of concentration or focus. And so often there are nutrition-related issues in children with autism. All sorts of diets and supplements have been tried. Currently, the American Academy of Pediatrics does not support one specific type of diet or supplement to cure autism, but that does not necessarily mean that some dietary interventions haven't been helpful or that some families or some children won't benefit from different dietary interventions. And so there's all sorts of interventions around. Some children have tried gluten-free, some children have tried dairy-free, some children have tried vegan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's definitely more research needed in this department. But it is very common for these types of children to have eating issues. Okay, so this is just some sample my plates and what they might look like depending on the age. You can see that the calories greatly increase with age. At age 2, it's not that much food. It's about a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons per different food group. Age 4, it's increasing a little bit. Age 8, increasing further. And age 16 pretty much looks like what an adult might eat. That piece of bread looks microscopic, but it's very similar to what an adult might eat. Childhood obesity. So childhood obesity is a huge problem. In the United States, 1/3 of children are either overweight or obese, and I actually believe it's much higher than this. I think this is kind of an older statistic. Obesity in children is associated with developing chronic diseases that were traditionally only seen in adults. So we have young children who are getting type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, even heart disease. And this is just horrible, horrible, horrible. Another reason that childhood obesity is such a big issue is because obesity in childhood and adolescence is more likely to lead to adult obesity. 40% of obese children will become obese adults, and 80% of obese adolescents will become obese adults. There are many factors contributing to childhood obesity. This is just a couple here. But it is a very, very serious problem. And again, if you want to learn more about that, I recommend taking maternal and child nutrition. Reversing childhood obesity. So we don't have a reversal yet. We haven't fixed this yet. I will say within the United States, since 2010, and I'm going to give somebody a lot of credit for this, but I believe that Michelle Obama actually played a significant role by influencing politics, increasing funding, and raising awareness of childhood obesity. And my kind of support of her in this is actually backed by trends in obesity rates. And what happened between the years of 2010 and currently is actually the increase in obesity rates has gone down. And so we have not reversed it, but it's no longer increasing at the same steady rate that it was. Cardiovascular disease. So like I said, with childhood obesity, children are getting these diseases of chronic diseases that were usually associated with older age. It's recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics to screen children for high blood lipids or high cholesterol between ages of 9 and 11. And so some children are being diagnosed that early with high cholesterol or high triglyceride levels. Type 2 diabetes used to be considered adult onset diabetes, not anymore. Unfortunately, we're seeing it in more and more children. And if they develop type 2 diabetes that young, the lifelong consequences of diabetes are really just going to be devastating. And this is going to take significant years off of these children's maximum lifespan. Breakfast eating. So eating breakfast is actually a very important intervention that is really so simple that can actually reduce rates of obesity, reduce rates of some of these chronic diseases. It can help kids focus in school. It can reduce actually behavior problems, increase concentration, increase focus, increase micronutrient intakes, and just overall is very, very good. Many schools have programs where children can get free or low-cost breakfast, and many schools are adding programs where children can actually eat breakfast in the classroom so that they don't have to show up that early to school to be able to have that breakfast opportunity. So schools and actually individual teachers are really recognizing the role that breakfast can play in all sorts of outcomes. Teenagers are evil. No, just kidding. Teenagers are teenagers are teenagers. Teenagers are fantastic because they're so smart. They have so many ideas, so many dreams, but they also have so many opinions. And sometimes their nutrition opinions don't agree with parents' nutrition opinions. This is an age where you really want to try to get your teen to adopt some healthy habits as well as positive body image, because that can be a big issue, both with overweight and with underweight or development of eating disorders. Many children at this age range, they don't really care about nutrition. They're not able to see towards the future and think about long-term consequences of them eating poorly. And so you might have to have your nutrition education focused on what is important to them. For example, maybe clear skin is important to them. And so you could teach them how diets that are high in fats and processed foods and greasy foods and low in vitamins and minerals can actually lead to skin issues and increased rates of acne. And that's totally true. Maybe child is interested in gaining more muscle, or performing on a sports team. So you would have to potentially tailor your nutrition education to something child is interested in. Additional issues. So they love sugar sweetened beverages. Again, we have seen declines actually in the consumption of these, even though they're still very high, but the rates have actually been declining. They're low in calcium and vitamin D, which is horrible because this is the age where they are beginning to reach some of that peak bone mass, and they're low in iron. Generally, men are less likely to be low than girls, and this is one, due to the fact that boys eat more, and two, due to the fact that girls are starting their menstrual cycles and losing that monthly allotment of blood with iron. Other issues with teens, they eat fast food, lots of them. They have their own money. Many of them have their own transportation. They have their own freedom. Parents aren't monitoring as much. Maybe they go to high school and there's an open campus. So that's not healthy for them. They drink too much caffeine. As far as caffeine recommendations go, it's actually recommended that under 12 years old, you should have 0 caffeine. Caffeine can affect heart rate, and there have actually been teens who have died overdosed on caffeine. And so it is potentially a pretty dangerous substance for children to have when they don't understand really the amounts that are in different drinks that they have, generally in drinks, but can be in foods, or what the consequences could be. Food allergies. So rates of food allergies have been increasing. It is potential also that our diagnostic abilities have improved, but rates are increasing, and they do occur more frequently in females than males. Generally speaking, sorry. Generally speaking, children do grow out of these, but not always. This chart shows some of the top 6 allergens. There's actually 2 more, which include wheat and soy. And many children will actually have multiple allergies. So of the children who do have food allergies, about a third will have multiple allergies. What you see here in the left-hand side of this slide is a medical bracelet, and children or adults can wear a medical bracelet like this to indicate any medical conditions. And so a medical bracelet with an allergy on it would be very helpful, just in case that child has an allergic response. Peanuts seem to be pretty potent allergens, and some children will have an anaphylactic response to them, meaning their bronchioles in their lungs will constrict, and so they'll have difficulty breathing, and this can be quite serious. Some of the symptoms of food allergies above, some people are so sensitive that they can't even be in the same room as the allergen. So because of this, many schools have actually adopted allergy protocols, and many schools have, for example, peanut-free classrooms, peanut-free lunchroom, peanut-free tables, etc. Peanut seems to be one of the most avoided ones in the school system. But this is pretty common and quite serious. Additional things. Sometimes cooking foods can destroy or I guess the appropriate word would be denature the protein component. And it's actually the protein component of these foods that children are allergic to. The top 8 food allergens, if they are in a product, they do have to be labeled. So product will have warning that they do contain potential allergens, and so that's good. And you have to make sure their diet is still adequate. So you don't want these allergies to be so severe and the diet so strict that they're missing out on essential nutrients. Additional information. So in the child's first 4 to 6 months of life, most practitioners will say 6, you should only do breastfeeding or formula. So either exclusive breastfeeding or exclusive formula. After that time period, it is good to introduce children to some of these foods. And if you're worried that they're going to be allergic to, for example, peanuts, say perhaps because you're allergic to peanuts or you have a family history of that, or a child maybe already has some allergies that you've identified, there is a certain protocol for introducing them to peanuts. And part of this could actually be done in a doctor's office. But if this child is just kind of coming from a household where there is not a history of peanut allergies or no other red flags, you could just introduce things like that at home. And so that early introduction can actually reduce chance of allergies later on. Using growth charts, what did we talk about today? What do the percentiles mean? Remember, 85th percentile, 95th percentile, less than 5th percentile. Different energy needs depending on age and food allergies. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk next time.